This adventurous story begins by showing an evil general who wanted to have the king of his own kingdom killed. The king's name was Caspian. In his anger, the general ordered his own soldiers, "Go and kill Caspian." All the soldiers set out toward the royal court to assassinate the king. We see King Caspian sleeping on his bed, but before the soldiers could reach there, his mentor, Master Cornelius, arrived. Cornelius quickly woke Caspian and took him to another room because his life was in danger. From this other room, Caspian and Cornelius witnessed everything: how the general and his soldiers stormed into the king's chamber and kept attacking the bed, thinking Caspian was still lying there. The general's main intention was to kill Caspian so that he could take full control of the kingdom. Caspian and his mentor were terrified and immediately decided to escape. Master Cornelius gave Caspian a magical horn that once belonged to Princess Susan. He told the king clearly, "Go deep into the forest with this horse and blow the horn. Warriors from another world will come to help us and our kingdom." Caspian understood and immediately fled. But the general and his soldiers started chasing him. Caspian had to get into the forest as quickly as possible, a forest filled with magical dangers. He entered the forest, but the general's soldiers hesitated. When the general got angry at them, they had no choice but to follow. Caspian had already gone far ahead, but in a moment of distraction, he hit a tree branch and fell hard to the ground, injuring his head. Soon after, two dwarves appeared at that spot. They approached Caspian, trying to rob him. But Caspian quickly took out the horn and blew it. A wave of sound spread all around. Now we are shown a city where Peter, Edmund, Lucy, and Susan live, four siblings who had once traveled to a magical place called Narnia. They had shared many experiences inside that magical kingdom. But it had already been a whole year since that incident. And they deeply wished to return to Narnia. Their train had arrived to take them to school, but as the train sped up more and more, a strange magical portal opened up. When the four siblings entered the portal, they were directly teleported to Narnia, that magical world where King Caspian had blown the horn. And because of that horn, the warriors from another world had now arrived in Narnia. Just as Master Cornelius had said, Peter, Edmund, Lucy, and Susan were overjoyed to see everything. They were thrilled to be back in their favorite place. Eager to return to their city, they started moving forward, but they could see the city was now completely destroyed. The last time they had visited, it was a flourishing and joyful place, but now it had become barren. None of them could understand who might have done this. For the time being, the four of them entered a small structure where individual boxes were kept. Inside those boxes were their costumes, the ones they wore as royal princes and warriors. All four began changing into their outfits, but Susan noticed, "My horn is missing." What she didn't know was that Master Cornelius had given the horn to Caspian, so that it could be used to summon the four warriors to this world, because a great and terrible danger was now looming over their kingdom. Next, we are shown the castle, where the general and Caspian's uncle are present. Caspian's uncle's name is Miraz, and he wanted to seize the kingdom, the throne, for himself. He hadn't even told the general about his true intentions. A royal council is held, discussing who would take over the throne after Caspian's disappearance. Miraz does everything he can to make sure the throne comes to him. He starts speaking ill of Caspian, claiming that Narnia's influence in the kingdom has diminished, and that it's a good thing, something they had all worked toward together. In truth, Narnia originally had control over the entire kingdom and its people lived peacefully. But due to recent major wars, Miraz and his allies took over the kingdom by force. Prince Caspian's father had been the rightful king of this land, but after his death, everything was handed over to Caspian. That's what made his uncle Miraz so furious, that such a young boy had been entrusted with the throne of the entire kingdom. Just then, a dwarf named Trumpkin was brought before Miraz. Trumpkin claimed that he had seen Prince Caspian, who had gone missing somewhere in the forest, and that Caspian had Princess Susan's magical horn with him. As soon as everyone heard the name of that magical horn, they were shocked. That horn belonged to one of the legendary warriors whose tales they had all heard since long ago. Miraz, alarmed by this, immediately sent all his soldiers to the same location in hopes of capturing Prince Caspian, and to ensure that no one else found out, he ordered Trumpkin to be killed. Two soldiers took Trumpkin to the middle of a river with the intent to drown him. Trumpkin tried his best to resist, but the soldiers wouldn't let him go. Meanwhile, Peter and his siblings noticed the boat and realized that the soldiers were torturing the dwarf. So Susan quickly drew her bow and fired arrows at the soldiers. One of her arrows struck the first soldier directly, killing him instantly as he fell into the water. The second soldier, frightened by the ongoing attack, panicked and ran away. Peter immediately jumped into the water and rescued Trumpkin. Once he was safely brought to shore and regained consciousness, Trumpkin was stunned to see the four siblings. Their appearance and their weapons matched those of the ancient warriors from another world. Trumpkin began to believe they might truly be the legendary warriors, though he still had a bit of doubt. To be sure, he drew his sword and began fighting Edmund. But Edmund had become quite skilled in sword fighting, and he quickly defeated Trumpkin, which finally convinced the dwarf that they truly were the princes and princesses from another world. Now we are shown another dwarf named Nickabrick, who was talking to a strange creature called a hunter. They had sheltered the injured Prince Caspian in their home. When Caspian regained consciousness after a while, he overheard Nickabrick and the hunter discussing whether they should keep him alive or kill him, fearing that if they protected him, his enemies might come after them as well. Hearing this, Caspian was shocked. He came out with a sword in hand, unwilling to let anyone harm him. He directly told Nickabrick and the hunter the truth, that it was his own uncle behind everything. His uncle wanted to kill him and seize the throne. Along with his general and the army, they had stripped the rightful Narnians of their land and power. But Caspian wasn't like them. He said, "Soon I will reclaim my kingdom, and when I become king, I'll make everything right." Now, Miraz arrives to interrogate Cornelius, who was none other than Prince Caspian's master, the one who had helped him escape. Miraz had found an arrow on one of his soldiers, and it belonged to Princess Susan. That's why he came to Cornelius, asking about the warriors from the other world. Cornelius told him that those warriors were incredibly brave, and if Miraz ever had to face them, he wouldn't survive. He warned Miraz again, saying, "If you encounter them, you won't make it out alive." Miraz then asked Cornelius about Susan's horn, the one people had been talking about for a long time. Cornelius simply replied that the horn was a tool to open a portal to another world. He also warned Miraz, saying that he should be careful because his countdown had begun, that the princes and princesses who had arrived would ruin all of Miraz's evil plans. But Miraz wasn't scared at all. After all, he had an army of millions. After extracting all the information he needed, Miraz ordered his soldiers to imprison Cornelius. Seeing Cornelius in such a state, a man named Sopes, a former supporter of Miraz who had turned against him, began to have second thoughts. Miraz then summoned the general and Sopes and told them they needed to build a bridge over the vast sea, so their entire army could march into the forest and find Prince Caspian. They had to find Caspian before the four warriors did. Meanwhile, we see Caspian continuing deeper into the forest. Behind him were Nickabrick and the hunter, who insisted on staying close, saying the forest was extremely dangerous. As they proceeded further, a group of soldiers suddenly appeared and started attacking them with bows and arrows. One of the arrows struck the hunter. Caspian couldn't just abandon him, he was a good king at heart, so he rushed back to check on the hunter. Even as the soldiers continued their assault, something unexpected happened. A small mouse appeared, but it looked like a brave warrior. These tiny mice began attacking the soldiers fiercely. Slowly, more creatures began to arrive, ones with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a horse. These were the true Narnians, forced into hiding in the forest after their kingdom had been taken away. The Narnians brought Prince Caspian to their secret hideout, the place where the remaining free Narnians had taken refuge. All the creatures began discussing a serious concern. Prince Caspian was, after all, the son of their enemies. Whether Prince Caspian should be kept alive or killed was being debated, but Caspian understood everything. He told all the creatures, "I want to become a king, and I know that great injustice has been done to all of you." He even took an oath that once he became king, he would restore their kingdom peacefully, because only the citizens of Narnia had the right to rule over Narnia. Hearing this, all the creatures began to realize that someone had finally arrived to help them, so they agreed to support the prince. Then we are shown the four siblings, the princes and princesses, who were moving forward with Trumpkin. Trumpkin told them everything about how Narnia had been destroyed. All the citizens once believed their rulers would protect them, but everything changed due to betrayal. As they reached a riverbank, they saw a massive bear. That bear was once a soldier of Narnia, but for some unknown reason, he began to attack the princes and princesses. Trumpkin saw this and attacked the bear, killing it, otherwise, it could have harmed Susan and the others. Trumpkin explained that although these animals once stood with them, after everything collapsed, they became uncontrollable. They believed even their own people wanted to harm them. That's why the only solution now was to restore the Narnian kingdom. They all continued their journey through the forest, where they saw many of Miraz's soldiers. These soldiers, on Miraz's orders, were building a bridge so that their army could easily enter the forest and find Prince Caspian. Peter and his siblings couldn't fight so many soldiers alone, they needed an army, which they didn't have yet. So for now, they retreated into the forest. There, while Lucy was sleeping, she had a vision. She saw that the forest of Narnia was guiding her toward their protector, Aslan. Aslan was a brave lion, a great protector and king of the Narnian kingdom. But in the previous battle, Aslan had been severely attacked and, in a way, had sacrificed himself. In the morning, when Lucy woke up, she heard sounds coming from the forest. As she went to check, Peter followed behind and stopped her. Because there was a dangerous creature working for a witch, Peter managed to save Lucy, but then someone attacked from behind. Peter drew his sword and started fighting back. It was later revealed that the attacker was none other than Prince Caspian, who had arrived there with his Narnian soldiers. When all the Narnians saw the 4 princes and princesses, they realized they were their allies. Peter recognized Caspian, and they both began sharing their stories. Once it was confirmed that they were not enemies, everyone went together to the spot where the remaining Narnians were living. Caspian told them everything, how the people from his own kingdom were trying to take over his throne, and that his own uncle was behind all of it. When Peter, Edmund, Lucy, and Susan found out that the same kingdom's people were responsible for killing the Narnians, they became furious, especially Peter, who declared that all those enemy soldiers must be defeated. Caspian and the others led them into a cave where everyone was safe. Inside, all the soldiers were crafting strong weapons in preparation for battle, knowing that one day, they would have to fight to reclaim their kingdom. Inside that place, they also saw the spot where Aslan was murdered. Looking at the growing army, Peter said that they should attack their enemies right away, taking advantage of the night, as their enemies would not expect such a sudden assault. Caspian considered the idea, but Susan directly refused, saying that they needed to proceed with proper planning. Lucy also added that they should wait for Aslan. However, Peter had already made up his mind and wouldn't listen to anyone. With his determination, many of the Narnian soldiers agreed to follow him, and they all set off toward the enemy's fortress to launch an attack. Peter, along with his siblings, used flying creatures to reach the fortress. Edmund was the first to land on the fortress so he could give the signal to the rest of the army waiting outside the gates. Slowly, the small mouse soldiers also snuck in. Their job was to open the gate as quickly as possible and take down any enemy soldiers in their path. Once the gate was opened, Edmund would signal the outside army to rush in and attack. Because it was a surprise assault, the enemies wouldn't have any time to react. But now Prince Caspian said he needed to rescue his master, Cornelius. Peter, however, told Caspian that they were straying from the plan. But Caspian did not listen to Peter at all, he went straight to rescue his master, Cornelius. Peter and Susan had no other choice, so they also moved forward. After a short while, Caspian reached his master and freed him. Master Cornelius simply warned him, saying, "Don't underestimate Miraz like your father did. He knows everything and could prove to be too powerful for you." Caspian understood this and went directly to Miraz's chamber. He pointed his sword at his uncle and asked, "Did you kill my father?" Miraz's laughter made it clear that he was indeed the one who had cruelly murdered Caspian's father. Miraz's wife even pointed a bow and arrow at Caspian. By now, Peter and Susan had also arrived. Discovering this truth made Caspian furious at his uncle. But before he could kill Miraz, his wife attacked Caspian, giving Miraz the chance to escape. He quickly alerted his soldiers about the surprise attack, and soon, all his troops started attacking Peter and his companions. Edmund, who was supposed to signal the army, got caught up in defending himself from relentless attacks. Still, he managed to send the signal. The entire Narnian army then entered the fortress territory, and a massive battle began. At first, the Narnians were clearly winning. But they had no idea that Miraz already had a backup plan. He had called in reinforcements, and now the Narnians started to weaken. Peter and Caspian realized that they were slowly losing the battle, with many of their soldiers dying in large numbers. To avoid more casualties, they decided to retreat, for now. But Miraz ordered his soldiers to shut the gates. If the gates were closed, everyone still inside would be killed. That's when a brave bull soldier from Narnia held the gate open with his own hands, allowing his allies to escape. Peter and his siblings began to exit the fortress with the soldiers, but Miraz started firing arrows at the bull soldier, and as the gate collapsed, the soldier was killed. Many Narnian warriors were still trapped inside, and under Miraz's command, they were slaughtered mercilessly. Those who had escaped watched helplessly from outside as their comrades were killed. After this heartbreaking defeat, they all returned to their place of refuge. Peter started shouting at Caspian, blaming him for ruining the whole plan with his carelessness. Caspian shouted back, saying it was Peter's plan to begin with. Everyone had advised against it, but Peter had convinced them that they could win. In that heated moment, everyone was stressed and upset, with no other plan left. Caspian was growing increasingly frustrated about reclaiming his kingdom, so the dwarf took him into a cave. Inside the cave were 2 strange creatures who told Caspian, "If you want, we can kill Miraz for you, but you have to do something for us." Since that's exactly what Caspian wanted, he asked them what they wanted in return. Suddenly, the two creatures pulled out a sword and began creating a frosty, icy formation with it. Within the ice, we were shown the image of a fearsome witch who had been killed years ago. This was the White Witch, who had been defeated by Aslan's army. It became clear that the two creatures wanted to bring the White Witch back to life. As they tried to force Caspian into offering his blood for the ritual, Peter and his siblings arrived just in time and stopped the ritual completely. They destroyed the form of the White Witch before she could be revived, because if she had returned, it would have led to chaos and destruction everywhere. Everyone was deeply disappointed by Caspian's actions. At the same time, Caspian's uncle Miraz was officially crowned king, placing the entire kingdom under his control. He ordered his soldiers to complete the bridge so they could wipe out the remaining Narnians, and he began planning the final assault with his allies. Peter, furious, decided to challenge King Miraz to a one-on-one battle. Everyone thought this was a good idea. So, Edmund took the message directly to Miraz, delivering Peter's challenge: whoever wins the duel will claim the right to the throne. Miraz, being overconfident, accepted the challenge. He believed Peter was just a child and posed no threat. Meanwhile, Peter instructed his soldiers to be ready for battle and told Lucy and Susan to go into the magical forest and bring back Aslan. Both sisters rode off on horseback while the duel between Peter and Miraz began on the battlefield. From the beginning, Miraz appeared much stronger and kept injuring Peter. Still, Peter managed to survive the blows, knowing that he had to win for the sake of the kingdom. Meanwhile, in the forest, Lucy and Susan were being chased by enemy soldiers. Their horses were injured in the attack, and although Susan fought back fiercely. But because the enemies were in greater numbers, they started overpowering Susan and Lucy. Just then, out of nowhere, Aslan arrives, brought back to life through the power of positive belief. Susan and Lucy quickly tell him everything, and after hearing it all, Aslan lets out a mighty roar and joins them on the battlefield. Caspian and the others also arrive near Peter, where a break in the battle is taking place. In the second half of the fight, Peter fights with even more courage and finally defeats Miraz. For the first time, Miraz starts to feel truly weak. Peter bravely overpowers and kills him. But just then, one of Miraz's generals arrives and shoots an arrow into Miraz's body, the same arrow belonging to Susan, and then falsely claims to his soldiers that Susan killed Miraz, not Peter, and that it was a cheating tactic. Hearing this, the entire enemy army becomes furious and prepares to launch a full-scale attack on Narnia. Now we see Aslan again. With just one roar, he brings the forest trees to life. The enchanted trees begin attacking and clearing out the enemy forces. Peter and Prince Caspian create a strategy together and trap the enemy army from all sides. Their combined efforts prove to be powerful. Only a few of their own soldiers are lost, while the enemy continues to weaken. Aslan, too, reaches the battlefield and uses magic to awaken the sea god, who then sends massive waves crashing onto the enemy forces. All of them are swept away by the water, including the treacherous general. This marks the final victory. Aslan and his allies reclaim their kingdom. Peter and his siblings humbly bow before Aslan. Aslan, with great respect, crowns Caspian as king of the realm. With everything back in place, the time finally comes for Aslan to deliver justice and give everyone the freedom to go wherever they wish. He opens a magical portal between two trees. Anyone who wants to leave can pass through it. It's also time for Peter and his siblings to return, as their mission has been completed. Peter and Susan, having learned their lesson, are told they can never return to Narnia again. But Edmund and Lucy are given one more chance to come back and learn more from this magical world. All four siblings step through the portal and return to their city, arriving at the exact moment they had left, while waiting for the metro train. Not a single moment had passed in their world. They all board the train heading back to boarding school. And with that, our story comes to an end.